Currently on the alpha server, Kuudra's profits are dead, the playability of Kuudra is dead, the run speed of Kuudra is dead, and the actual enjoyability of part 4 is also dead. So the main changes that they've done so far is to remove Rend instead of rework it as they had promised. Kuudra revenue is just down the drain with 3/4 of it being gone. Since there's no more attribute rolls on armor, there's no more shards that are of a good price, and there's no more god rolls. So with these gone, there's a high likelihood that Infernal Kuudra will probably make a maximum of 40 mil an hour with a max setup. Not only this, but it doesn't take into consideration the fact that there's going to be a much higher run speed without Rend and the attribute buffs of before, meaning that the profits could range to also be much less. The new attribute system heavily reduces the playability, coins per hour, and overall viability of Kuudra as a money-making method, and as part of the game as a whole. Kuudra's money was previously based on its ability to control two major markets, the Crimson Essence and the attribute market. This revamp undermines both of these major markets. So as an example, attributes no longer provide the same effect as before, being less than 1/7 as strong, as it only provides the buff of one piece. On the other hand, mana pool has just been abysmally compensated to only provide 1 mana per level, with just different attributes, giving a total of about 30 mana, when previously it gave up to 1600 mana with a full mana pool 80. So to just show you what it actually gives you, I already salvaged all my items for my attributes, and it's just been giving me Mist Shards, Tide Shards, Cascade Shards, and Cryo Shards, which as you can see are all just the same. They give you 1 intelligence per level, and as a whole it just gives you 40 intel, which is the equivalent of mana pool 2. I don't really see how that's a good compensation for the huge amount of money that everyone spent on mana pool. And mana pool 10 is pretty much more expensive than probably most of the god rolls at this point, apart from Crimson. So if Molten Cloaks can give you Anank Feathers, why doesn't mana pool 10 give you them? The new system of loot for Kuudra was also planned to align with the new system changes, which is what they've done, but they've just done this by removing all the attributes, providing more essence, and a single new weapon. These apparently exciting and irrelevant rewards that were mentioned in the design threads relate to the new feathers that I just mentioned, and if you haven't seen already, what they do is they just give you RNG meter progress. So they're trying to make Kuudra exciting by letting you get any RNG that you want and just printing money. But to me that just doesn't sound like very good game design, because it just feels like they haven't put anything original into revamping the loot. They've just made it so you can get other loot. So the new system of attributes all being active at the same time is pretty flawed in concept, since attributes are designed and work best as a customizable selection for specific niche activities. So Breeze was for bestiary grinding, Veteran was obviously for slayers, Mana pool was for RCM, or combinations of these attributes with Breeze and Veteran, Magic Find and Veteran, Mana pool, Mana regen, and etc. While designing them to all be active at once results in some pretty cool combination, it makes it really hard to balance, and thus provides a lot of just generally nothing for a lot of content, because having Fishing Wisdom while doing Slayers is pretty much useless, while you also lose a lot of Combat Wisdom and Magic Find in exchange for this. There's a few ways that the attribute system could be designed in a different way to allow hunting to still have a more relevant place in the game, while not entirely changing the concept of attributes that existed for almost 3 years. So there's a few ways that this could have been done below. So the first way that they could implement this is through attribute slots, which is going to be similar to gemstone slots, where a tier 10 shard could be applied to the slot to give the benefits of the tier 10 attribute. But for balancing, of course, they could make it so you could only have one of each different attribute on an armor, so you're not going to end up with 2 mana pool 10s on the same piece. So these slots could be, of course, unlocked from the drops from Kuudra, or the legacy existing attribute shards that would still remain in the Kuudra loot pool. The new attributes could also come from hunting and could be merged with the legacy system without heavily disrupting the place of Kuudra in the game and the customizable system of attributes. The next way that this could be applied is through attribute points, where you'd be given 100 to 120 attribute points as a whole, which could start lower and increase through hunting or through Kuudra, where these points could be assigned into the attributes that you unlock later on, which would be very similar to tuning points with accessories right now. The caps for the attribute would start very low and could be increased with obtaining shards for that attribute, similar to the system that is currently on alpha. And notably, they'd go up to a cap of 80 to 100, where 1 point is 1 attribute level. Legacy attribute shards would also drop specifically only from Kuudra. So for doing specific content, you could tune your points into the most useful stat buff for that activity. For Slayer, you could tune for Veteran 100, but also sacrifice your Vitality and Magic Find. But on the other hand, you could also tune for Veteran 40, Vitality 30, and Magic Find 30. To spread your stats into multiple different areas that you may need. And with Catacombs, you could tune for a mix of both legacy and new ones to buff your damage, while using the new score and RNG meter attributes from hunting. What this would allow for is a proper progression system, while also preserving customizability. So similarly to the attribute points idea from before, the attribute tree would allow for a similar idea to the one that was teased, where there's a menu where you can select certain traits to be enabled to get a much stronger buff. The current idea is pretty good by having all shards applied, meaning all the useless ones now have in actual use. But currently these buffs are also really underwhelming in comparison to what they used to give. This system also means that you could select a certain amount of attributes from a certain skill. For example, Foraging gets 2, Fishing gets 2, Combat gets 4, and 4 universal. So you can choose the attributes that you'd want active based off the amount of shards and what shards you have deposited. This would probably still be a slight nerf compared to the current attributes. Under the current changes, Kuudra has lost so much of its value as a money-making method due to its nerfing of legacy attributes and the flawed design of the new system. By removing the customization and weakening key stats, the update strips away what made Kuudra profitable and engaging. To preserve its relevance, the system needs a rework, whether through the attribute slots, point allocation, or an actual selection menu that I mentioned before, that would maintain the customizability without undermining progression of Kuudra and the general usage of Kuudra as a whole.